Hey guys, so welcome to Digit.in, and today we're going to be reviewing a laptop that has been hotly anticipated amongst a lot of professionals and a lot of creative individuals. Today we're going to be reviewing the Dell XPS 15. Wait a minute, is this the right laptop? Is this the right XPS?
Oh shit, oh wait, this one is...
Sorry about that. Now this is the new Dell XPS 15 and this is what we're going to review today. So here's everything that's amazing and everything that does not work about this laptop. Let's first talk about the specifications of this machine. Now the Dell sells the XPS 15 in two variants, one powered by the Intel i9 processor and one by the i7. In India, you only get very strict configurations. Now the i9 variant that we have here today has 32 gigs of RAM on the inside. It's got a terabyte of NVMe storage, a 4K display which is touch enabled, and a host of ports. The Dell XPS 15 has one Thunderbolt port, an HDMI 2.0 and a USB 3.0 with the USB-A format. And on this side you have an SD card reader and my favorite feature about this machine, a battery indicator right here. So in terms of I/O, Dell's kept it fairly minimal. With the Thunderbolt port, you are able to kind of expand on your connectivity if you need to. It does mean you need to get a dongle, but at the end of the day, you do not lose out in terms of connectivity. In fact, you can even connect a USB-C powered monitor to this laptop or connect it to your HDMI port. So the flexibility is there and that's pretty amazing. One thing that is very interesting and probably the most contentious part about the Dell XPS 15 is the Nvidia Gtx 1050 Ti that powers it. Now it's a 4GB graphic card and there was a lot of talk about and a lot of debate within our team about whether Dell should have gone with the 1060. But bottom line is the 1050 Ti is no slouch. Sure, you're not going to be editing any 4K raw footage on this or color grading master files, but for most creative professionals, for most AutoCAD designers, for most people who need a powerful machine, and even for most casual gamers, in fact, this is going to be pretty great. And we're going to tell you why. Talking about the design of the XPS 15, I want to step back. I want to look back at what Dell XPS used to be. The machine we started this review with, now this is the Dell XPS L502X. This is my personal laptop. This is something I bought in 2010 and surprisingly it still works fairly well. But look at it, it's bulky. This battery, this big bump here is the 96 watt-hour additional battery that we bought, and in general it's all plastic. It's yeah, it looks okay. It would have looked nice back in 2010, but today is just way out of date, right? It's fat, it's heavy. So in comes the new Dell XPS 15. Now, interestingly, this machine is no lighter than that, but what has changed is the use of solid aluminum and carbon fiber to reinforce the components and the design of this machine. The display has very narrow bezels on top and the sides, which is something that I'm really happy about, and I'm going to get to why that matters in a bit. The webcam unfortunately is placed at the bottom of the display, which is not flattering at all. If you're not trimming your nose hair, whoever you're going to get on a video call with is going to hate you. Now the design of this machine is actually very impressive. It's extremely slim. It's less than an inch at its slimmest and about an inch at its fattest. That's saying something for a machine that houses an i9 processor and 32 gigs of RAM and a terabyte of storage along with a dedicated graphic card. There's also a fingerprint sensor that's embedded right into the power button. Now here I wish that Dell would have given some kind of an accent to the power button, like a silver ring or something of that sort to make it stand out, but it doesn't. And what this actually did was, for the first half of the time that I was using this machine, I did not know, I wasn't able to tell that there was a fingerprint sensor there, and I just kept wondering, why did Dell remove a fingerprint sensor? Now you have to understand that I come from a very old XPS where the maximum resolution on the display was 768p. So, you know, this is interesting. Just intuitively, a lot of people are going to wonder where the fingerprint sensor is, and it's there and it's embedded in the power button. The hinge has also changed over the years. Of course, Dell has been following this design for a while, but the good thing about the single hinge is that it will not crack open like the one on my old XPS. So this is pretty good, and it's easy to open with one hand. It has magnetic locks. It doesn't have a magnetic lock actually, but it feels like it snaps shut in place and stays securely there. The only thing in terms of the design, I guess this is more of a port and functionality thing, is that Dell hasn't yet switched to the USB power delivery system for charging the laptop, which means you're going to have to carry one of the proprietary adapters, and it's a 130 watt adapter, but it's still a hassle. The display on the XPS 15, this particular variant, which is powered by the i9 processor, is a 4K display with a touch screen, but does not have the anti-reflective coat on it. And initially I was very skeptical about whether I would be okay with a glossy display or not, but after having used this for over 2.5 weeks in all sorts of conditions, this has been my main machine for the last 2.5 weeks, there has been zero issues with the glare, like literally zero. There is a bright light right behind me right now, and I can see the contents of the display just fine. And this applies especially when you're photo editing, video editing. I wouldn't say color grading though, that's a separate thing altogether, but if you're even gaming on this machine, glare is not an issue, even in bright daylight outside. Additionally, this display is also HDR certified and Dell Premiere Color certified. So Dell builds a Color Premiere app into this laptop by default, which allows you to manage the color space you're going to work in. You can choose the DCI-P3 color space if you want a wide gamut reproduction, or you can choose sRGB if you're editing photos, editing movies, or even playing games for that matter. If your game supports HDR, then switch to DCI-P3. If you use the native Netflix app downloaded through the Windows Store, you will be able to play back content in Netflix HDR without any problem. This display is by far one of the brightest we have tested so far. It has gone all the way up to 434 nits of brightness, which is quite a lot. The color accuracy is spot on with the delta E of less than 2.5, and the colors just work. Of course, the only problem is that you're going to have to be very sure of which color space the display is set to before you get working on your program, your photo edits, or your gaming sessions. So make sure you use the Dell Premiere Color app often. Now on to one of the most exciting aspects about the Dell XPS 15 with the i9 processor: performance. The i9 chip, which has a thermal envelope of about 100 degrees, will hit that mark very quickly, and it will throttle very fast. You'll probably get peak performance out of that chip for maybe a few seconds at most. But even though you're not getting the peak turbo clock, what you do get is impressive performance. For example, in Lightroom, this particular machine was able to export 100 images from that Nikon D850 in less than 2 minutes 20 seconds. The i7 counterpart for the same test, for example, took almost 4 minutes. That's almost twice the time. When exporting a 4K file from Premiere into a 4K H.265 file, it took about, again, this is a 10-minute clip, and it took about only 6 minutes to do so, with color grading, with edits, with transitions, all of that in place. But in terms of its benchmark numbers, this machine isn't very far behind. So let's say if we talk about Unigine Valley, in Unigine Valley, this maintained an average FPS of 72. In Heaven, it maintained an average FPS of 60. And even in gaming, when playing Doom in 1080p ultra settings, we were locked at 60 FPS. However, when we switched to 4K at ultra settings, the frame rate dropped to 28 to 30 FPS. Lowering the settings from ultra to medium is when we finally got somewhere north of 40-50 FPS. Even if you want to do casual gaming, this machine is great for it. If you want to do creative work on it, right, whether it's photo editing, video editing, it's great for it. If you attach this laptop to an external display, which is color calibrated, you can even do color grading using the Dell XPS 15. This is literally one of the best laptops out there in the market right now. Only catch being the i9 chip is not able to sustain its true performance for a long time. You are paying a very big premium for the i9 configuration, and unfortunately thermals have not yet been improved to a point where you can sustain that performance over a prolonged period of time. So to conclude this review of the Dell XPS 15 9570 loaded with the i9 Intel chip, for about 2.5 lakhs, this is what you get. You get Intel's best processor, you get the highest amount of RAM on a laptop possible, that's 32 GB. You get a 1 terabyte NVMe drive that has 2.8 gigabytes per second of read speed and 2.2 gigabytes per second of write speed. You get Thunderbolt 3, you get a USB-A port, you get HDMI 2.0, you get about 4.5 hours of battery life, which, by the way, this battery is also powering a 15-inch HDR display with maximum brightness of about 440 nits. For a creative individual like photographers, filmmakers, video editors, the Dell XPS is a beast. It's a powerhouse which is going to give you insanely good performance, absolutely hassle-free, and it's incredibly light, portable, and stylish. So thank you guys for watching this video, and in case you liked it, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. If you have a friend who's wanting to buy a new laptop for any kind of editing, for gaming, whatever, needs it to be good looking, maybe you should redirect them to this video. So thank you guys.
For the latest technology updates, subscribe to Digit.in and don't forget to hit the bell icon.